He began his reign with humility and promise, but over time his disobedience, fear of people, and jealousy led to this downfall. Welcome to the Anchor Holds platform. We are a family here where we dive into the Word of God so we can grow together. So if this is your first time, we are super elated that you have decided to join us. Today, I have a good teaching for you. This is a teaching I've been wanting to do forever, and we're going to be going through the book of 1 Samuel to dive into the life of King Saul, the first king of Israel. But before we get started, let's center our heart in prayer. Holy Spirit, guide me. Self be crucified. Holy Spirit, be magnified. Lord, I pray that you'll put the words on my lip, that you want me to speak, not what I want to speak, but what you want me to put out into the air to your people. These mercy I do ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Today we are going to be, as I stated earlier, we're going to be studying the life of King Saul, the first king of Israel. And we know that Saul was also rejected by God. Our reading today, we are going to be starting off in 1 King 8 to see why there was even a king. Because if you remember, over the period of time that Israel, they were under the leadership of Moses, Aaron, and then Joshua. And after the death of Joshua, we see that God installed 12 judges who, when the people of Israel, they turned from God and everyone did what was right in their eyes, that God appointed judges over a period of 400 years. And in 1 Samuel 8, and it reads, and it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his son judges over Israel. Now the name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abiah. They were judges in Beersheba, and his son walked not in his ways, but walked aside after lucre and took bribes and perverted judgment. We see kind of like a similar thing with Eli and his two sons. But the difference between Samuel, when they talk about his son, he take them out of his position. Eli, on the other hand, he continued to let them serve, even though they were perverting judgment and doing everything that was against God's way and laws. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah. And Ramah is the place where Samuel dwelt. And he said unto them, Behold, thou art old, and thy son walked not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the other nations. And this is where Israel kind of went wrong, because Israel, they are God's chosen people. They are supposed to be separated. They are supposed to be the transformer. But we see they're trying to conform like everyone else in the other nation that God has separated them from, and they're trying to be like the other nation. So they see the other nation with kings ruling over them, and they want that same opportunity. But the thing, it displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. So as we read, the elders, they have came to Israel, Samuel, and they demanded a king to rule over them like all the other nation. And if you recall, in Deuteronomy 17 and verse 14, there was a prophecy. Moses, he makes either prophecy or some proclamation saying that the people, and it reads, When thou art come unto the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, and shall possess it, and shall dwell therein, and shall say, I will set a king over me, like us all the nation that are about me. And we see that now transpire into 1 Samuel. So it's like God give Moses this revelation that after the people, they have settled and everything, they are going to demand a king. And if you read Deuteronomy 17, like you go from verse 14 to 20, it gives you like a little in-depth analysis of what was the counsel that Moses gave to the people about them wanting a king. And it said, and the Lord, verse 7, and the Lord said unto Samuel, Listen, hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. So if you remember, the other nation, they had physical king ruling over them, but God was the supreme. He was the king over Israel. And like, that is the best king for you to have, because the other nation, they have kings that are defeated. But when you have God as your king, the one true and living king, the kings of kings, then he is undefeated. But Israel, they're trying to be like the other nation. And it said, so today what I'm going to be doing, I'm not going to be reading like the entire text. So I'll be jumping, playing like hopscotch. So I'll be jumping back and forth, just trying to highlight key verses as I see it. And it said, if you read verse 20, it said that he also may be like all the nation, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. So you have God already fighting your battle. We see that no enemy, no nation was a match to God, but no, you want a physical king to go out and fight battle for you, just like the other kings have been doing, or the other nation. And then we're going to go into verse 9. So before I go into chapter 9, you see, so all the prominent figures, so you have Moses, you have Aaron, you have Joshua. Now you have the period of the judges. So all the judges, their ruling have been over. So now the people in Israel, if you read Judges 17 and verse 6 and Judges 19 and verse 1, I'll briefly... Judges 17 verse 6. I think that I have that one written down wrong. Oh, my bad. I'm looking at Deuteronomy. So Judges 17, my bad. I was looking at Deuteronomy. Judges 17 and verse 6, it kind of gives you a picture like the spiritual state that Israel is now in. Judges 17:6, it said, in those days there was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And then if you look at verse 18 as well, it said, in those days there was no king in Israel, and in those days the tribe of Danite. So basically kind of like the same analogy. Then verse 19, it mirrors verse 17, chapter 17 and verse 6. And it came to pass in those days when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite. So I just wanted just to emphasize the part of where it said there was no king, and everyone kind of did what they assumed based on the teaching, based on whatever was passed on to them from their forefather, from Moses, from Joshua, and the judges and Aaron. They did what based on the knowledge that they have, what was right in their eyes. It didn't say they did what God required of them, but what they came to probably the conclusion or the knowledge that was right in their sight. So we see at first when the people that they requested a king, that it pleased Samuel, and Samuel, like we see at first, he didn't oblige to their request. Instead, he took the matter to God, and then God tell him to listen to the voice of the people, because they're not rejecting you, they're outright rejecting me. And the request for a king was in part a rejection of God's unique kingship over Israel. However, it also reflects the people's desire for a centralized human authority to lead them, especially in military matters. And God instructed Samuel to advise and warn them. So even after Samuel prayed on their behalf and he went and intercede to God like on this matter, we see that the people, Samuel advised them, this is what the king will do. And I showed before I jump into 9, and Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people. So that's chapter 8 and verse 10. And that he asked of him a king. And he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself for his chariots and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariot. And he will appoint him captains over 1,000 and captain over 50, and will set them to hear his ground and to reap his harvest, and to make him his instrument of war and his instrument of chariot. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries and to be cooks, and to be bakers, and you will take your fields and your vineyard and your olive yards, even the best of them which give to his servant, and you will make the tenth of your seed, and he will take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyard and give to his officer and to his servant, and he will take your manservant and your maidservant and your goodliness, young men, and your asses, and put them to his work. He will take the tenth of your sheep, and he shall be his servant. And he shall cry out in the days because of your king, which ye have chosen, and the Lord shall not hear you in that day. Nevertheless, the people, so even though God is like, are you sure? Do you know what you're getting into? So he give them a comprehensive breakdown. This is what the king, based on historical data, this is what the previous king, the kings of the nation that they're emulating, that they're trying to be like, this is what those kings have been doing. So God makes sure there is the understanding. So in the latter, you cannot come back and say, oh, we didn't know what we were getting into. So this would seem like there is a contract that is being made between the people and God to let them know what you're getting into. And it said, nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they say, nay, but we will have a king over us. So the people, they had, the judges have put, especially when we read earlier about Samuel 2 son, and especially when you read about Eli 2 son, or they were being corrupted. So the people, like the judges, have kind of put a bitter taste in the people mouth, and now they want to experience something different by having a king over them. And Samuel, that he may, verse 20 said that he may also be like all the other nation, and that our king may judge us and go before us and fight our battle. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said unto Samuel, listen unto them, hearken unto them, their voice, and made them a king. And Samuel said unto the man of Israel, go ye every man unto his city. Now we get into chapter 9. And now there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zerar, the son of Bechorath, the son of Aphiah, a Benjamite, a mighty man of power. If you remember in the book of Judges, if you remember, there was a story about the Levites and his concubine in Judges 19, and all the tribe of Benjamin deal badly with the man and his concubine when he was passing through, and his servant said to stop in this location, but he said no, he feel better if he go onto his own people, and they treated his wife badly. And you have to read chapter Judges 19 and beyond to see what happened. So basically, after that incident, the entire tribe of Benjamin was almost wiped out for their heinous sin that they have committed against the Levi and his concubine. But we see that God doesn't look on our past mistake and count us off. We see that God doesn't think like us. His thought is not our thoughts, neither is his way our way. So God chose a tribe that was almost annihilated, a tribe that was almost wiped out, for that tribe, for the first king of Israel to come from that tribe. So that illustrates to us the God's nature of love, of mercy and compassion. So Saul is coming from the tribe of Benjamin, and it's a mighty man of power. When you see the mighty man of power, it could be referring to his strength, his might, his prestige, his influence, his ability, or wealth. And he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice young man and a goodly, and there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulder and upward, he was higher than any of the people. So verse 2, it gives us a brief description of Saul's outward appearance. Saul is everything that the people imagine or desire their king to be. A choice and handsome young man. Saul was noted for both his family, prestige, and also his physical appearance. And there was no one in Israel in comparison to Saul. When he stands shoulder to shoulder with them, there was no one in comparison who looked or was the same height as Saul. So that to show us that he was very tall in stature. And from the outside looking in, it seemed like Saul was a great fit. And if being king over Israel was all about image and appearance, because we see on numerous occasions that God always said, like, man is looking at what they can physically see, but what is in the heart? God's know what is in the content of our heart. And Saul was the man, the king from a central casting, but based on the people pick, or probably based on the people preferences, what they want in a king. We see that Saul, he portray all of that. And the name Saul means acts of God. And if you remember that the people asked for a king, so it fit perfectly with the narrative in which we're going. But one, I want us to pay attention to verse 19. Because if you remember, basically just I'm kind of going to summarize verse 9, but then I will read verse 19 to 21 for you. So basically Saul, his father asses were last, and he went out to like find them, and his servant tell him to go unto the seer. So the seer is kind of the same as the prophet, which was Samuel. And then when Saul went to Samuel, Samuel make a revelation unto him about what God had desired. In verse 19, we're going to read verse 16, okay? Tomorrow about this time I will send thee a man out of the land of Benjamin, and thou shalt anoint him to be captain over my people Israel, that he may save my people out of the hand of the Philistine. For I have looked upon my people, because their cry is come unto me. And if you remember, this is kind of similar. You remember when Israel was in Egypt, and their taskmaster was putting all these every burden upon them. When they cried out to God in Exodus, we see God send Moses and Aaron to deliver them out of the hand of the Philistine, out of the hand of Pharaoh. The same thing if you read the book of Judges, even though they turn away from God and they start doing their own thing, when they were oppressed and they sincerely repented and cried out to God, we see that's when God starts sending the judges. And so God is just letting Samuel know, tomorrow this person is coming to meet you. That is the person that I have anointed to be captain over my people. And verse 19, and Samuel answered Saul and said, I am the seer, go up before me into the high place, for ye shall eat with me today, and tomorrow I will let thee go, and will tell thee all that is in thy heart. So God, like probably everything that, the question and everything that Saul probably have in his heart, God is going to make revelation to Samuel. And verse 20 said, and as for thy asses, they were lost 3 days ago, set not thy heart mine on them. Like, don't worry about them, for they are found. And on whom is all the desire of Israel? Is it not on thee and on all thy father's house? So all the desire, Israel want a king. So Samuel is saying all the desire of Israel, it kind of lies on you, because now God has appointed you, and he's going to anoint you to be king over his people. Then look how humble Saul is. Look at his humility. And Saul answered and said, am I not a Benjamin, of the smallest of the tribe of Israel, and my family the least? So if you remember, I said, the tribe of Benjamin was almost wiped out for that heinous crime that they did. The least of all the families. So even though he's of the tribe of Benjamin, he's like the least of the tribe of Benjamin. We see a same thing with Gideon. Gideon make mention of the same thing when God called him. And he said, the least of, and my family the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin. Wherefore then speakest thou so to me? Like, you're probably saying you got me all wrong. Then we're going to jump over into chapter 10. So in chapter 10, we see Saul is being anointed. And verse 1 read, then Samuel took a vial of oil and poured it upon his head and kissed him and said, it is not because the Lord anointed thee to be captain over his inheritance. And so Saul is anointed and he's appointed by God to be the first king over God's people. So he's going to be the captain over God's people. And we see when Samuel anointed him, we see that he kissed him. And when he did that to David, when he anointed David, he didn't kiss David. So that is that love. And maybe because kind of Saul spent some time with Samuel, maybe they have developed a relationship. So maybe that could be why Samuel have such a soft spot for Saul. Verse 2 said, verse 2 said, and when thou art departed from me, then thou shalt find the 2 men. So that is to confirm like the missing horses, asses and stuff that they were found. But look at verse 6, and it said, and the Spirit of the Lord will come upon thee, and thou shalt prophesy with them, and shall be turned into another man. So they said any man in Christ is a new creation. All things are passed away. So now that God have put his Spirit upon Saul, we see he also transformed him from the person that he used to be. And then verse 9 said, and it was so that when he had turned his back to go from Samuel, God gave him another heart. So whatever was in his heart, God gave him a heart, a different heart. And all those signs came to pass that day. And we are going to be looking at verse 15 to show the humility of Saul. So when we can see where he is coming from and then his ultimate demise in the end. Verse 15 said, and Saul's uncle said, tell me, I pray thee, what Samuel said unto thee. So this is after that encounter with Samuel, and he came back that his uncle is prying. His uncle is inquiring what was discussed between him and Samuel. And Saul said unto his uncle, he told us plainly that the asses were found, but of the matter of the kingdom, because he would tell his uncle that he was anointed as king. Wherefore Samuel spake, he told him not. And then also, if you look at verse 20 to 22, it said, and when Israel had caused all the tribe, and when Samuel had caused all the tribe of Israel to come near, the tribe of Benjamin was taken. When he had caused the tribe of Benjamin to come near by their family, the family of Mitri was taken, and Saul the son of Kish was taken. And when they sought him, he could not be found. So see, Saul, that humility, like you don't want, like, some people, or they would be extra, of everyone in Israel, God have chosen me to be king, and they could be flexing their power. But we see that humility in Saul. Therefore, they inquire of the Lord. So now they can't find Saul. The king is nowhere to be found. And therefore, they inquire of the Lord further if the man should yet come thither. And the Lord answered, behold, he had hid himself among the stuff. So Saul, when he was appointed, we can see that humility going on with him. And we're going to jump over to chapter 11. Before we jump to chapter 11, if you remember, I said, Saul was going around declaring, God have chosen me out of everyone in Israel. But we see also that humility that keep demonstrating we started from in verse 9. So you go to chapter 27, that Saul has been anointed as king, but not everyone is happy for him. They're not happy for God's choice as choosing him for king. And in verse 27, but the children of Belial said, who shall this man save us? And they despised him and brought him no present, but he held his peace. So if you remember that the people wanted a king that will go before them and fight against, their enemy. And if you remember, Saul doesn't have any accolade as any warrior fighting any battle or anything. So the people in verse 27, the Belial, they probably see him as unfit for this position that God have put him into. Then we're going to go to chapter 11 and we're going to read from 1 through 7. Then Nahash the Ammonite came up and encamped against Jabesh Gilead, and all the men of Jabesh said unto Nahash, make a covenant with us, and we will serve thee. And Nahash the Ammonite said unto them, on this condition will I make a covenant with you, that I may trust out all your right eyes, and make it for a reproach upon all Israel. So you see how degrading this king Nahash is, that he's going to gorge out their eyes. And we know that the eyes is like the entrance, it's like the gateway. So now he's like trying to take out their eyes. And the elders of Jabesh said unto him, give us 7 days respite, that we may send messenger unto all the coasts of Israel. And then, if there be no man to save us, we will come or to thee. So he's like, they're like, give us a leeway, give us some time. We're going to see if there's anyone in Israel that is able to come and battle with you before we succumb to your request. And we see that Saul was anointed at the perfect time. Then came the messenger to Gibeah of Saul, and told the tidings in the ears of the people, and all the people lifted up their voices and wept. And behold, Saul came from the herd out of the field, and Saul said, what aileth thee? What aileth the people that they weep? And they told him the tidings of the men of Gibeah. And the Spirit of God came upon Saul when he heard those tidings, and his anger was greatly kindled. So now we see him having a godly anger for injustice that's been done. And he took a yoke of oxen, just like we see Samson did, and hewed them into pieces, and sent them throughout all the coasts of Israel by the hands of messengers, saying, whosoever cometh not forth after Saul and Samuel, so shall it be done unto his oxen. And the fear of the Lord fell on the people, and they came out with one consent. So it's like Saul sent a message out to the people, like, if you don't come out and join me and Samuel, this is what's going to happen to your oxen. So we see that the people, they came in agreement with to come out with him. And then in verse 12 it said, and the people said unto Samuel, who is it that, because if you remember back in chapter 10 and verse 27, oh, not everyone had seen Saul as a king. So now this war between Saul and Nahash the Ammonite, it established, it solidified him as being God's choice, as being the king over the people of Israel. And the people said unto Samuel, who is he that said, shall Saul reign over us? Bring the men that we may put them to death. And this is Saul's response. And Saul said, there shall be not a man be put to death this day, for today the Lord had wrought salvation in Israel. Then we're not going to be going into chapter 12, because chapter 12 is mostly on Samuel. So we're going to look at a specific verse. We're going to be looking at verse 13. And 1 Samuel 12:13, now therefore, behold, the king whom ye have chosen. So God is letting Israel know, Saul is the king you have chosen based on your description of what you want in a king. So this is the king you have chosen. Now therefore, behold, the king whom ye have chosen, and whom ye have desired, and behold, the Lord hath set a king over you. Then we are going to go into chapter 13. 1 Samuel 13, we're going to be reading verse 1. Saul reigned 1 year, and when he had reigned 2 years over Israel. You know, people say that the first year in marriage is the hardest. It is the same thing with if you, the first year you are in a position, it is the hardest year because people are looking to you. So it's like you're trying your best not to slip up or fall. So it is the first year is the hardest. So we see that he went over that hump of the first year. Now he is into his second reign as king. Verse 2 said, Saul chose him 3,000 men of Israel, whereof 2,000 were with him, and then the other 1,000 was with his son Jonathan. Then if you look at verse 3 unto verse 6, and Jonathan smote the garrison of the Philistine that was in Gibeah, and the Philistine heard of it, and Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, let the Hebrews hear. And all Israel heard, saying that Saul had smitten a garrison of the Philistine, and that Israel also was at an abomination with the Philistine. And the people were called together after Saul to Gilgal. And the Philistines gathered themselves together to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen, and people as the sand which is on the sea. So you can see that based on Saul, 3,000 men, and then he split it between 2,000 with him and 1,000 with Jonathan. There is no comparison to the Philistine army. So if they're going to win this battle, it have to be some divine intervention from God for them to win against the Philistine. Because you see, it said they have 30,000 chariot and 6,000 horsemen, and people as the sand which is on the sea. Just like when God said he's going to make Abraham descendant like the sand of the sea, which is innumerable. You cannot count it. So they pitched in Mishmash, eastward from Beth Haven. So we see that the Philistine, when you don't just go into battle before knowing what you're getting yourself into. So the Philistine they're assessing the threat to see what it is, but they are making preparation just in case. And it said, in verse 6, and when the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were distressed, when the people did hid themselves in caves and in thickets and in rocks and in high places and in pit. Then we jump to verse 8, and he tarried 7 days according to the set time. If you read in verse 1 Samuel 10 and verse 8, there was a set time between, let's jump to it. And thou shalt go down before me to Gilgad, and behold, I will come down unto thee to offer burnt offering and to sacrifices of peace offering. 7 days shalt thou tarry till I come to thee and shew thee what thou shalt do. So now, in verse 8, that is, if you remember, Samuel had made an appointment with Saul that for him to tarry 7 days, that he will come at the set time that they have agreed upon. But Samuel came not to Gilgad, and the people were scattered from him. So if you remember, the people already see the Philistine army that have already gathered against them, and the odds are not looking good against them. So the people are scattered against him. So now he decided to take matters into his own hand. And Saul said, bring hither a burnt offering to me and peace offering, and he offered the burnt offering. So if you remember, so far in chapter 13, everything is going good, because the Philistine gather against them. They are not fighting them. But now Saul is probably in a state of panic because the people there are deviating from him. They're leaving him. And then he's in a state of panic. And then to make matters worse, Samuel said he's going to be there he didn't give him like a specific say, at this time I'm coming. He just say 7 days. He don't give him a specific time. And we see every time when people get impatient because they can't wait on God, it always leads to consequences. So the impatient get the best of him. So he decided that he was going to take matters into his own hand. And if you remember when we read earlier that Jonathan, now he goes smooth the garrison of the Philistine, and now this cause for like a World War III is about to kick off. And then the people are scared. Saul is probably scared too. And then Samuel is nowhere to be found. So now he took up on him to go offer sacrifices, that is not his office, that is for the Samuel to do. And sometimes we see people want to not stay in their calling or in the office that God called them to do. They want to be all over the place, all up in offices that God don't appoint them, and trying to take over. And this is what we see that Saul did. And it said that immediately after, not probably immediately, but as soon as, which is basically like immediately as he had made an end of offering the burnt offering, guess what? Samuel showed up, and he went out to meet Samuel. And Samuel said, what hast thou done? And Saul said, because I saw that the people were scattered. So everything is basing everything on the people. What are you saying? Like, you are the king. I'm sure if you probably tell the people, they're going to be obedient probably to you, but we know sometimes fear kicked in and we're not thinking rationally. So he said the people were scattered from me. So everything is about me, me, me. And that thou camest not within the days appointed, and that the Philistine gathered. So he's like, I have like so much things going on against me. The people are scattered. You did not show up at the appointed time. And then the Philistine are gathered themselves together. Therefore, I take this upon myself. Nobody told me, I take it upon myself. Therefore said I, the Philistine will come. So here he's making an assumption because you see that they're gathered. Basically, if they're gathered, that means eventually they're going to come down upon me to Gilgal, and have not made supplication unto the Lord. I forced myself. So you see here, he said he forced himself because he knows he's not supposed to do it. So he forced himself to offer a burnt offering. And then we see in verse 13, and Samuel said unto him, thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord thy God, which he commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever. Hear what he said. But now the kingdom shall not continue. The Lord had sought him. So you see, remember God said in chapter 12 and verse 13, it said that this is the king you have chosen. But here in God said he's going to look for a man after his own heart. And the Lord had commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee. And then if you go into verse 19 to 22, it said, no, there was no smith found, so like blacksmith found throughout all the land of Israel. For the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make them swords or spears. So it's like the Philistines subdue Israel because they don't want Israel to be a threat to them. So now they take away their access, that they cannot have any blacksmith in them to make like any spear, any sword, anything that would be used as a weapon to come and try and fight the Philistine. But all the Israel went down to the Philistine to sharpen every man his shear and his clutter and his axe and his mattock. So any tool that needs sharpening, the children of Israel, they have to go to the Philistine, because the Philistines seemed like they were the ruling party at that time. And yet they had a file for the mattock, for the culture, and for the forks, and for the axes, and to sharpen the goods. So things that the Philistine probably don't see as a detrimental threat, they let them have like a little file so they can sharpen that. And verse 20, so it came to pass in the day of battle that there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people. So that's why the people are fearful, because if you're going to fight a battle, you're going to war, and you don't have the correct tool, you don't have the correct weapon, it's like you're already defeated. But it was only Saul and Jonathan that had a sword. But it said the people that were with Saul and Jonathan, let me read it over. So it came to pass in the day of battle that there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people that were with Saul and Jonathan, but with Saul and with Jonathan his son was there found. So Saul and Jonathan probably the only one who have a spear and a sword. And we are going to go into chapter 14, where it said that Jonathan, this is when Jonathan and his armor bearer decided to go up against the Philistine. So verse 6 said, and Jonathan, 1 Samuel 14:6, and Jonathan said unto his young men that bear his armor, come and let us go over unto the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for there is no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few. And you can see, like, even though Saul is Jonathan's father, we see like Jonathan have more of a fear for God. Jonathan trying to do things and depend on God, which we don't see Saul doing. And it said in verse 7, and his armor bearer said unto him, do all that is in thy heart, turn thee, and I will with thee according to thy heart. So we need somebody like Jonathan, armor bearer. Then said Jonathan, behold, we will pass over unto these men, I will discover ourselves unto them. If they say thus unto us, tarry until we come to you, then we will stand still in our place and will not go. But if they say thus, come up to us, then we will go up, for the Lord had delivered them into our hand. And both of them discovered themselves into the garrison of the Philistine. And the Philistine, behold, the Hebrews come forth out of the holes that they have hid themselves. So if you remember earlier, they were hiding. And the men of the garrison answered Jonathan and his armor bearer and said, come up to us, and we will shew you a thing. And Jonathan said unto his armor, come up after me, for the Lord hath delivered them into our hand. And Jonathan climbed upon his hands and upon his feet, and his armor bearer after him, and they fell before Jonathan, armor bearer. So there was a trembling. Verse 15 said, in the house, in the field, and among all the people, the garrison and the spoiler, they also trembled, and the earthquake. So it was very great trembling, and we can see this is divine intervention from God. And the watchmen of Saul in Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and behold, the multitude melted away, and they went on beating down one another. So if you remember the strength of the Philistine army, now they are fighting against each other. And to make matters worse, then Saul, he come up with this, okay, the people are fighting, and he come up with this, I don't know what is going on with Saul. He gave a foolish command that no man can eat any food. So if you read from verse 24, and the men of Israel were distressed that day, for Saul had adjured the people, saying, cursed be the man that eateth any food until eve. If you're fighting a battle, you need your stamina, you need your endurance, because if you go into battle weak, then you become a casualty to the enemy. So Saul, he had prevented his men from eating. And so none of the people tasted any food. And all day of the land came to a wood, and there was honey upon the ground. And when the people were come into the wood, behold, the honey dropped, but no man put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. But Jonathan heard not when his father charged the people with the oath. Wherefore he put forth his hand of the rod that was in his mouth, and dipped it in his honeycomb, and put his mouth to, and his eyes were enlightened. Then answered one of the people. So it's like the people is trying to, I guess, go against Jonathan, because there was an oath given, and Jonathan, as the king's son, he should be obeying the oath. But now we see that he's like, it seemed like he is disrespecting the oath that his father gave. But it said that he didn't heard it before. Then answered one of the people and said, thy father straightly charged the people with an oath, saying, cursed be the man that eateth any food this day. And the people were faint. And he said, Jonathan, my father, so this is a revelation Jonathan is giving us, that my father had troubled the land. See, I pray you, all mine eyes have enlightened, because I tasted a little of this honey. So it's like that honey rejuvenate him. It gives him that stamina, that vigor, so he can continue fight, because it made no sense for you to be fighting a battle on hungry stomach. And he was saying, Jonathan is saying, can you imagine how much more the people, if after the people had eaten freely today of the spoil of their enemies, which they found, for had not that been a great slaughter among the Philistines. And we are going to jump into verse 49, where know the son of Saul were Jonathan and Ishiai and Melchishua, and the names of his two daughters, the names of the firstborn Mirab, and the name of the younger Micah. And we know that Micah is the one that was David's first wife. So if you remember, I forgot to mention that earlier, that God had rejected Saul back in when he offered that offering in his second year of his reign, when he went and offered that peace offering and that burnt offering, that his kingdom, if he didn't go into the place of the priest and offer, God would have established his kingdom. But we see that because he did what he wasn't supposed to do, that God had rejected him. And we see God take into account that Saul, in his 2 years, he was young, as reigning as a king, because before he had no prior experience. So God gave him a second opportunity. So the first time God rejected him, we see God went ahead in chapter 15 and still used him. And we see in the first instant he didn't repent. Now we get this second opportunity. Let's see what he do with it. Samuel also said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to appoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore listen, hearken thou unto the voice of the Lord of the God, because before you have sinned by being disobedient. Now God is giving you another opportunity. So make sure you are listening attentively to the words that are coming out of my mouth. Thus said the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, or he laid wait for him in the way when he came out of Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both men and women, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and asses. And Saul gathered the people together and numbered them in Tilmah, 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah. And he came to the city of Amalek and laid wait in the valley. And Saul said unto the Kenites, go out, depart, go ye down to among the Amalek, lest I destroy you with them, for he shewed kindness to all the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites, and Saul smote the Amalekites from Avliah until thou comest unto Shur. So this is not, that is over against Egypt. So if you remember, sometimes we can't see in the future. God knows everything. He's omnipresent. He knows past, present, and future. So God tell him to go and destroy all of them. And then we see it said, and this is not saying, if you remember when in Esther, they are a descendant of the tribe of Benjamin. And because of Saul's carelessness, it almost wiped out his entire descendant. So it said that he was to smooth the Amalek from Avliah until he come to Shur, that is over Egypt. But he said, and he took Agag, the king of the Amalek, alive, and utterly destroyed all the other people with the edge of the sword. So here we see he being partially disobedient. And Saul and the people spared Agag the best of the ox and the sheep and the fatling and the lamb and all that were good, and would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refused they. So anything that riffraff, they didn't want it. And it said, then came the word of the Lord unto Samuel, saying, verse 11, it repented me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he is turned back from following me and had not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto Lord all night. If you remember in Genesis 6 and verse 5, when God created, of everything that God created, guess what God said? That he repented that he had created man. And we see the same word here used, Genesis 6:6, and it said, and it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. So basically God is in the same state when he had created man, and man choose whatever. Now Saul is in that same state where God had repented him that he have set him over as captain over his people. And when Saul heard that, because as I mentioned before, Samuel really loved Saul. So now when God again rejected Saul, we see that Samuel was heartbroken. So then hear this, and when Samuel rose early in the morning to meet him in the morning, he was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set up a place, and he's gone about and passed on and down to Gilgad. And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said, blessed be thou of the Lord. I have performed the commandment. You see, say commandment, not commandments of the Lord. And Samuel said, what meaneth that this bleating of the sheep in my ears and the plowing of the oxen which I hear? If you go to verse 22, and Samuel said, as the Lord has great delight in burnt offering and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fats of ram. For rebellion as is the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the Lord, he had also rejected thee from being king over his people. And it said that in verse 27, and as Samuel turned about to go away, he laid hold upon his skirt of his mantle, and it rained. If you remember, the same thing happened to Solomon, when the prophet went out and his thing was ripped, and he said, God has like rent the kingdom from you and giving it to your enemies. So like Jeroboam had 10 of the tribe, and then 2 was under Judah because of the sake of David. And so Saul, he decided, you see, he started blaming people, said, oh, the people didn't carry out the thing. They were the one who do this. So for one, he is overall in charge of the people. And as the leader, when people fail, it is on you as the leader because you failed them. But no, he's not taking any responsibility for his action. He's trying to pass the blame off onto others for saying, oh yeah, I messed up. And then in verse 16, and it said, and the Lord said unto Samuel, how long wilt thou mourn for, chapter 16, for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel. So God now is going to appoint the person that he have elected to be king over his people. And in chapter 16, that is when the Spirit of God departed from Saul, and then he was tormented with that evil spirit. And once that evil spirit come upon him, it was like he wasn't thinking rational anymore. It was like, I don't know, his logical thinking was like all the thing. Verse 14 said, and the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. So when that evil spirit come upon him, it doesn't matter who it was, like he start acting recklessly and he doesn't think rational. And when the evil spirit, verse 23 said, and it came to pass when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul, that David took an harp and played with his hands. So Saul was refreshed. So somebody told Saul that David is able to play music, and when David played what is music, it was able to soothe that evil spirit. So that was spiritual warfare going on there. So when David played the music, he was able to bring Saul some relief. Then you go to chapter 17, and this is when Goliath, he taunted Israel for 40 days. And at that time also David was appointed as Saul armor bearer, but he had went back to take care of the sheep. So day 40, for 40 days, 40 nights, that Goliath will come and taunt Israel. And he would defy the armies of the living God, and nobody, all the mighty man of valor, or all the soldier that Saul have, they were fearful to go up against Goliath. But we see David come, when he come back to his brother, because his dad asked him to bring stuff to them, he trying to figure out what was going on. Then he sent a word, say that he can go against the giant. Then they went, bring him before the king. And then David said unto Saul, thy servant kept thy father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear and took all the lamb out of the flock, and he killed them. So we're not going to be focusing too much on David, because we're trying to go over into the life of Saul, and we know this is like a lot of things we're trying to cover in a short period of time. If you remember now, also that David killed Goliath, and the king promised that whoever killed the giant will be his son-in-law. So his first daughter that he was supposed to give, Merab, to David, he ended up giving it to somebody. Then he learned later on that his younger daughter loved David, and he decided he's going to give his younger daughter to David. But there's a catch. You want David to die in the process. So he said, go and kill. I need you to bring 100 Philistine foreskin, but David bring extra as a betrothal gift. He bring 200 Philistine foreskin to him as a betrothal gift for his daughter. And we know that once Jonathan came into contact with David, it's like they formed that union, they formed that bond together that was unbroken. And Saul tried to kill David, and David's wife protected David. He also tried to kill David, and Jonathan at first was kind of doubtful that is trying to kill David, so he inquired, and when he realized that his dad was actually trying to kill him, then we see that he warned David, and David went out from the presence of Saul, because in chapter 19 we see that he tried to kill him, and verse 1 said, and Saul spake to Jonathan his son and to all his servants that they should kill. So now he's not even hiding it no more. And David took it upon himself to go run away, and he came on to, we're going to go to chapter 21. Then came David to Nob to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech was afraid that the meeting of David, and said unto him, why art thou alone, and no man with thee? David said, the king had commanded me on a business, and said unto me, let no man know anything of the business, wherefore I send thee, and what I have commanded thee, I have appointed my servant to such and such. Now therefore, what is in there under thy hand, give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or what there is present. So he came to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech the priest, he was like surprised to see David by himself, because I'm sure he has seen David with others. Now David is by himself, so he was very curious why the king security team, his bodyguard, is by himself. But this was because David was running from Saul. And while David was running from Saul, the priest gave David bread, and he also gave him the sword of Goliath, because he asked, like, if there's anything. David said unto him, is there not there under thine hand spear or sword? And I have neither brought any sword. So David is like, probably I was in a rush where I'm going, and I forgot to take like the necessary thing I need. And while he was there, Doeg, an Edomite, he was the chiefest of the herdsmen that belonged to Saul. He was there in like captivity, and he see the transaction, or he seen what was taking place between David and Ahimelech. And he went and told Saul. Well, he didn't go and tell Saul. And the servant of Achish said unto him, is not this David? So David had to feign madness before this king, so Saul didn't kill him, and that was how he was able to depart. So Saul, in chapter 22, he came, and Saul in verse 7 said unto his servant that stood before him, hear now, ye Benjamites, because if you remember, it's from the tribe of Benjamin. Will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyard, and make you all the captains of 1,000 and captain of 100? So basically he's saying, I am a Benjamite. I'm going to take care of you because we're coming from the same tribe. David is coming from a different tribe from you. He's not going to take care of you like I would take care of you. That all of you have conspired. So we see he's not thinking rationally. He's thinking that everybody's against him and everybody's siding with David. Because if you remember, when they came out, all the people had said Saul has killed his 1,000 and David is 10,000, and that bring a jealousy between them. So ever since that moment, no, Saul is on a mission that at any means possibly is trying to kill David, so David cannot take the throne away from him. And he said that all of you have conspired against me, and there is none that shew me that my son. So he's kind of trying to play the sympathy game, like, you guys don't love me, nobody care about me, everybody's taking side with David. And now I've made a league with the son of Jesse, and there is none of you that is sorry for me. So he's like sorry, trying to be sorry for himself right now. He said, even my son had stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait at this day. And in that moment, it said, no, Doeg the Edomite, which is, you know, the Edomite, they're descendants of Esau, was set over the servant of Saul, and said, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob to Ahimelech, the son of Abiathar, and he inquired of the Lord of him, and gave him victual, and sent him on his way, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. Then the king sent to call Ahimelech the priest, the son of Abiathar, and all his father, the priest, and that word came unto him. When you read verse 15, it said, Did I then begin to inquire of the Lord of him, be it far from me, let not the king impute anything unto his servant, nor to all this also from my father, for thy servant knoweth nothing of all this, less or more. So it's like David tell a lie, just trying to escape and try because he was hungry, tell like a little lie, and he didn't think nothing of it. But Doeg at the time, he saw what was being done, and now he come and report to the king, like there is a league that between David and Ahimelech, that they are siding against you. So he's here trying to plead his case, like, I don't know nothing that is going on. I do this for David because I know he is your man, your servant, and you two have a tight-knit bond. So I do this, like there's nothing else going on. But it said, and the king said, thou shalt surely die, Ahimelech, thou and all thy father's house. And the king said unto the footman that stood upon him, turn and slay the priest. So you see, he's not even thinking rational. No, like the priests are God's servant, and you don't care who he kill, like no one, like anything that he see him as a threat to his kingdom, he's gonna take them on. Turn and slay the priests of the Lord, because their hand is also with David, and because they knew when he fled and did not shoot it unto me. So his paranoia is getting the best of him. But the servant of the king, and you see the servant of the king, they're Israelites, so they know better, and that's why they didn't lift up their hand against the priest and his family. But Doeg is the Edomite, different story. He put their hands to fall upon the priests of the Lord, so they would not put their hand to fall upon the priests of the Lord. And the king said unto Doeg, turn thou and fell upon the priest. So like, why you don't do it yourself? So now he tell Doeg to do it, and Doeg the Edomite turned, and he fell upon the priest and slew that day 85. So 85, a score is 20, so 85 persons that did wear the linen ephod. And Nob the city. So he didn't just stop at the priest. He went to the city of the priest, smote with the edge of the sword both men and women, children and suckling and oxen and ass and sheep at the edge of the sword. But you see, when God tell him to destroy his enemy, he didn't destroy them. But the priest that is not an enemy, we see that he have no issue trying to, who he see as a threat or as an enemy, his ego and his insecurities taking over, and he is willing to execute. He don't save like no best for nothing, but he is there fighting against God, pick. We know you cannot fight against God and win. So he had no issue killing them. And we know that David later on, he blamed himself for what happened to the. So after that, it said in verse 14 that there was Abiathar the son of Ahimelech came and tell David what happened. And it said, and David abode in the wilderness in stronghold and remained in a mountain in the wilderness of Ziph, and Saul sought him. So every day it's like, so maybe this is a strategy we can, like, you know, you every day you got to be fighting, you're fighting spiritual warfare. So every day you got to make sure you are prepared. So every day non-stop, Saul would go after David. And if you go to verse 24, we see on numerous occasions that David spared the life of Saul, but Saul don't even take heed to it when his life is spared. So in verse 20, chapter 24, and it came to pass when Saul was returned from following the Philistines, so there was news that the Philistines are coming, and he went to fight against them. Now that that is finished, he come back, because David is his prime enemy, his prime target. Behold, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi. Then Saul took 3,000 men. So for one person, you're taking that much many persons to go against him, and seek out of all Israel, and went to seek David and his men upon the rocks of the gold. And it said, and verse 4, and the men of David said unto him, behold, the day which the Lord said unto thee, behold, I will deliver thy enemy into thy hand. And Joshua. Then David arose and cut off the skirt of Saul's robe privily, so in private. And it came to pass afterward that David's heart smote him, because he had cut off He said unto his men, the Lord forbid that I should do this unto my master, the Lord's anointed, should stretch forth my hand. So you see, when Saul had the opportunity, every opportunity he have, he trying to kill David. David have the opportunity to kill Saul, but he's like, I cannot do it because he is the Lord anointed. And if you read verse 16, it said, and it came to pass when David had made an end of speaking these things, words unto Saul, that Saul said, is it thy voice, my son David? And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. So maybe this is him quoting back in his right mind, and you see that every time he tried to do evil to David, David repay his evil for good, that he would have a moment where he kind of repented, but then we see that he reverted back to his old ways. So you remember how Saul didn't care when he killed all the priests and his descendant here? No, he said to David in verse 18, and so we'll read from 17. And he said unto David, thou art more righteous than I, for thou hast rewarded me good, whereas I have rewarded thee evil. And when thou showest this day that thou hast dealt with me, for as much as when the Lord had delivered me into thy hand, thou killest me not. For if a man find his enemy, will he not let him go away? Give me a sec. For if a man find his enemy, will he let him go well away? Wherefore the Lord reward thee good for what thou hast done. And then in verse 21, he said, swear unto me. We'll read verse 20 so we don't. And now, behold, I know well that thou shalt surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in thy name. Swear unto me, therefore, unto Lord, that thou wilt not cut off my seed after me, and that thou wilt not destroy me out of my name out of my fathers. Also, Saul, he know that David is God's choice, and he see that God is going to establish his kingdom with David, and he's begging David to, like, do not, like, when I am gone, like, do not destroy, like, my family. Like, I don't want, like, my seed to be cut off from the face of the earth. Like, spare me so that my relative, that they can still go on. So we see that Samuel died, and when he died, it's like, before Samuel died, if you remember, there was one instant when Saul, when he was pursuing David, and that was the last encounter between him and Samuel and Saul, that Samuel, again, when Saul was in the present, he started to prophesy again. We're not going to go over 25. We are probably, so in chapter 26, we see again that Saul trying to kill David. David's spear is live. And then we go to chapter 27. And it said in verse 4, and it was told Saul that David was fled to God, and he sought no more again for him. So it seemed like Saul gave up from chasing after David. And this is where things get pretty weird. In chapter 28, we see that Saul is trying to get an answer from God. God is not answering him. So then he seek out a woman from Endor, which had a familiar spirit, which was prohibited for them to do. And if you remember prior, Saul had done away with everyone. He had got rid of them out of the city. Maybe one escaped, just like we see when he was supposed to destroy Ahab, or he didn't kill all of them. So now he sought out a woman with familiar spirit. And look, you see, he's not doing something right, because then he disguised himself, and then he went in the night to this person. Verse 11 said, then said the woman, whom shall I bring up unto thee? And he said, bring me up Samuel. And we know that that is something that God prohibited them from doing. So when he asked, bring up Samuel, and when the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice, and the woman spake to Saul, saying, why hast thou deceived me, for thou art Saul? So you see, you can try to think you're deceiving man, but see, God made this revelation where this lady was able, because the woman too, she was scared at first, because Probably she just there taking people money for somebody to actually show up. And we know that God can use anything to have his will be done. So God have this woman, Saul, show up. And Saul then say, why hast thou deceived me? For thou art Saul. And he said unto, be not afraid, for what saw I saw? And the woman say, I saw gods ascending out of the earth. And then Samuel started telling Saul in verse 15, and Saul said unto Saul, why hast thou disquieted me to bring me up? And Samuel answered, I am sore distressed, for the Philistine war against me, and God is departed from me. And God, no matter whatever means he's trying to reach God through, God is not answering him, so he's feel rejected. So now he probably get a taste of his own medicine to see what it feels to be rejected when God tell you to do something. Now you reject God, and now God has rejected you. And it's better for man to reject you than God to reject you, because now we see that it is not going well for Saul. And it said in verse 16, then said Samuel, wherefore doest thou ask of me, seeing the Lord is departed from thee and is become thy enemy? And we don't want to be of God as an enemy. And the Lord had done unto him as he spake, for the Lord had rented the kingdom out of thy hand and given it unto thy neighbor David. Because thou obeyest not the voice of the Lord, nor executed his fierce wrath upon the Amalek, therefore hath the Lord done this thing unto thee this day. Moreover, the Lord will also deliver Israel with thee into the hand of the Philistine, and tomorrow shalt thou and thy sons be with me. The Lord also will deliver the host of Israel into the hand of the Philistine. When Saul fell straight, so when he heard that thing, he fell straight to the ground. It was like, that's not what he was hoping to hear. And he refused to eat, so the lady had to force him, the witch had to force of Endor had to force him, or whatever she is, force him to eat something so he can regain his strength. And in chapter 29, that the Philistine, they gather against Israel as time passed before. And in that one, they said David cannot go with them. So Saul in chapter 30, this is when it said, in chapter 31 we'll go, because chapter 30 seemed like it's about David. Chapter 30 is about David. Now the Philistine fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the fleet and fell down slain in Mount Gilboa. And the Philistine followed hard upon Saul and upon his son, and the Philistines slew Jonathan, Abinadab, and Melchishua, Saul's son. And the battle went sore against Saul, and the archers hit him, and he was sore wounded of the archer. Then said Saul unto his armor bearer, draw thy sword and thrust me through therewith, lest that uncircumcised come and thrust me through and abuse me. But his armor bearer could not, for he was sore afraid. Therefore Saul too. So Saul always telling people, do stuff like, if you want to commit suicide, do it yourself. You want somebody else to carry out your deeds. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell upon it. And when his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he fell likewise upon his sword, and he died. So Saul died, his 3 sons and his armor bearer and all the men. So it's like you started off good, and then just to see the way you ended, they say like you die like just like how David said about Abner, or Abner as a mighty warrior, he let Joab he let down his guard, and because he let down his guard, Joab was able to kill him. So he died like a brute beast or something like that. So we can see that although Saul began his reign with humility and promise, his disobedience over time led to his downfall, because so some of the lesson we can learn from King Saul, a strong start does guarantee a strong finish. We can never be too big where we think we cannot go to God, where we have sinned and we think we're too big because of our position or our accolades or our prestige, that we cannot go and seek God for repentance. Because we see David, and probably people said, well, David did worse thing than Saul and God forgive him. But David went and truly repented, and because he repented, God forgive him. And faith must be maintained, not just initiated. The second lesson we can learn is partial obedience is still disobedient. God desires full surrender, not convenience. 3, fear of people can replace fear of God. Saul obeyed public opinion more than God's command. And 4, jealousy and insecurity destroy leadership. Comparing yourself to others is detrimental and can lead to downfall. And 5, when God is silent, check obedience, not his faithfulness, because we know God is faithful when he promised. God had not abandoned Saul. Saul had abandoned God's instruction and his commandment. And in conclusion, King Saul's life is a warning, but also a merciful lesson. God values obedience over sacrifice, humility, and a teachable heart more than position, accolade, or talent. And we see that because Saul have rejected the word of the Lord, that God has rejected him, and you don't want God to reject you, because we know to obey is better than sacrifice. I hope you were able to learn something from this. Have a blessed day. Remember that God loved you with an everlasting love. Stay faithful and help us, and let us continue walking, because this is the only thing that will last forever, walking with God. Bye.